You know what? Forgiveness is not just something you give, it's something you receive. Today, we are talking about the act of forgiveness. So, the verse for today is be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as Christ God forgave you. So, one of the things that I find very key in that verse is just as Christ God forgave you. Of course, this is the NIV version. But my challenge and my question to you today is, have you received that forgiveness he's giving you? All too often we think that forgiveness is something we just have to give out, and then if we give it out, we have to reconcile with people. Forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. Forgiveness does not mean putting yourself back into another toxic situation. Forgiveness is not about making things the way they were. It's about releasing you from the weight of the bitterness of that situation. Uh, over 20 years ago, I was at a church and I was really involved in this church. It was one of those churches you walked in and you were voluntold where you were serving that day. You walked in and you may be needing to sit in the pastor's service, but they needed you in children's ministry, or they needed you to help with offering or communion or whatever. And so it was one of those churches that was a very tight-knit church, but it was a very much be the hands and feet at all times. And sometimes we lost track of the fact of just being fed, right? I made some great relationships there, and I made some that were a little tough. And one of the friendships that I made there, uh, it wounded me. It wounded me deeply, and I remember sitting in church, uh, several weeks after being wounded by this friendship, and I'm writing, and the pastor's up there preaching, but God was doing something in me. Have you ever had those moments where you're just so in tune with what God is ministering to your heart? And I am very theatrical in the sense that I love drama, I love writing, I love good writing in movies and shows and things like that. And so I was writing this out in play form. It was a conversation between me and God. And it was a conversation about forgiveness. And I was clinging, it was a picture in my mind of me clinging to a cross. And I'm holding on to this cross with everything I've got. I mean, I've like got a bear hug on this cross, right? And I'm hugging on for all it's worth. And God's telling me, why are you hugging on to the cross? Jesus isn't there anymore. And I'm arguing with God. How many of you argue with God? Be honest. I know some of you do it. I know some of you argue with God because some of you are like me. You got a little spice in your step. Well, I'm arguing with God. And I'm like, but I hear there's forgiveness in the cross. And he goes, no, forgiveness was in the man who hung on the cross. And I said, well, I can let go whenever I want. I just don't want to. He goes, well, let go. And I'm like, I don't want to. He's like, no, really, let go. He's like, I got something better for you over here if you just let go of what you're clinging to there. And as I was letting go, I could feel, you know, like skin pulling and splinters and all these things. And I'm crying out to God. I'm like, it hurts. He goes, yeah. He goes, but I'm doing a new thing. I'm pulling away those old scabs and wounds. And yeah, sometimes that hurts. But the new skin that's coming beneath that is going to be so much better for you. And I start screaming, but what about her? Why doesn't she have to forgive? And he said to me, She needs to forgive. But that is my discussion with her. I can't have you saddled to unforgiveness unless I can't have you saddled to unforgiveness and be in this place forever, because I've got bigger and better and greater things for you. And you have to give forgiveness. And then you also have to receive my forgiveness so that you can carry on the mission I have for you. And that I have it written down somewhere still to this day. That vision that I had of me wrestling with God over clinging to the symbolism of forgiveness versus truly forgiving this person. Now, I will admit, it did not bring us back as friends. We're Facebook friends. We are acquaintances. I hold no ill will towards them. I think they're a beautiful family. But I was wounded in a time that I was already hurting. And for somebody that already has grown so much in knowing who I can and can't trust my heart with, in that moment, that was somebody that I knew I couldn't trust my heart with. They may have grown, they may have gone on, and that's great. And I cheer them on from the sidelines. But that relationship never went back to the way it was. And that forgiveness that I gave them, whether they gave it back to me or not, I'm walking in forgiveness from them. So finding my way through all of this and still envisioning myself, where am I still holding on to that cross, going, the forgiveness is in the cross, forgiveness is in the cross, and God saying, no, it's in the man that hung on the cross. What do I need to let go of? What anger, bitterness, resentment, what do I need to let go of as far as forgiveness goes? You need to ask yourself that. You need to ask yourself, what have I not forgiven? This is a perfect season for it. A reminder, tomorrow we're going to be talking about Good Friday and hope, and it's going to be a great reminder of what was paid for us to receive forgiveness. So our challenge questions today are very simple. Who do you need to forgive? And this includes yourself. I've had to do a lot of forgiveness on myself. So who do you need to forgive? And then what's keeping you from releasing that pain? Have you become so enmeshed with the cross of waiting for somebody else to lead the charge on forgiveness that when you pull away from this, there's going to be some pain? It's like a rehabilitation of sorts. You're going to take care of the wounds and the scars and bring up new fresh skin, new fresh livelihood, a new perspective, a new way of life is going to come out from you releasing that pain. And then how might your life feel different if you walked in freedom? If you were to walk in freedom from this weight of unforgiveness, what would that look like for you? For me, in that time, in that place, it was me setting healthy boundaries. It was me saying, I appreciate your unsolicited advice on a situation you know very little about. But I am talking this over with God right now, and I'm in His Word. If you've got a scripture for me, give me a scripture. But I'm not taking any other advice other than biblically grounded advice. And when I say biblically grounded, I just want the verse. I don't want your interpretation of the verse, right? And that was a strong boundary I used during that season of hurt and working through all of that forgiveness. Because I needed to keep taking back what was given to me and taking it back and putting it against the word and going, okay, this is what man's telling me, but what is God telling me? Because I'm wrestling with God right now over this. And while it was such a hard season of our lives, it was 22 years ago, exactly 22 years ago, that this all happened. I can look back on it now and see how rich it made my life in that season. Even in the middle of so much chaos that was going on in my life at that time, there was a richness and a peace because I wasn't holding on to bitterness, anger, and resentment during that. So, like I said, tomorrow we are going to be talking about the hope of Good Friday. And remember, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as Christ God forgave you. That's Ephesians 4:32. And your challenge questions for today are: who do you need to forgive, including yourself? And what's keeping you from releasing that pain? How might your life feel different if you walked in freedom? So I would love to hear any testimonies you have about that. And I would also love to hear any feedback you have on who you might need to forgive or how you need to forgive yourself. You can DM me or leave it in the comments. If you're watching the replay, please leave a note to let me know that you watched the replay. I'm not really doing all this for attention and appearances and all that on social media. I'm doing this out of an obedience. Just a way for me to start shining the light and using my voice the way God has called me to use it. But sometimes you just need the hands and feet of Christ. And that's what you all are that are watching this today. So thank you very much for listening. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow and talking about Good Friday.